Welcome to Shadowed Tales Archive. Tonight's story is titled, The Hollow Howl. Let the shadows speak.
Part 1. A Cold Invitation. I was 12 the first time I heard the screaming. Not the usual kind, this was different. It came from the woods behind our cabin, deep past the creek where even deer refused to tread. It was late autumn, the kind where breath fogs and leaves crunch like old bones. My father and I had just finished dinner, venison stew, dry cornbread, and silence. That was our usual routine. He wasn't a talker, especially not after Mom left us. Some said she ran off. Others whispered darker things. Dad never gave a straight answer, and I didn't push. That night, he broke tradition. "You'll be joining me tomorrow," he said, cleaning his rifle. "Time you learned what's real in these woods." I blinked at him, unsure if he was serious. "You mean hunting?" He looked up. Hunting and other things. Those 3 words stayed with me long after the fire died out. They weren't said with menace, but with a worn caution, like he was warning me about a storm he'd seen before. A storm that doesn't just bring rain. The next morning was gray and brittle. Frost clung to the porch railing like a desperate hand. Dad handed me a coat, too big for me but heavy and woolen. It smelled like cedar and rusted metal. We packed light. 1 flashlight, a hunting knife, 2 rifles, and a leather pouch filled with dried herbs and something Dad wouldn't let me see. "Stay close. Don't speak unless I speak first. And if you hear anything that sounds like crying, you walk faster," he said. "Even if it's human?" Especially then. I should have asked more questions, but instead I nodded and followed him into the forest. Our cabin sat on the edge of Fern Hollow, an old patch of mountain land that didn't appear on recent maps. Locals called it cursed, though they never used that word. Bad place, they'd say instead, or too quiet. A woman once told me it was where the land forgot how to sleep. The woods weren't loud. No birds. No wind. Just the occasional snap of frost-bitten twigs underfoot. An hour into the hike, we reached a clearing where the trees opened like a wound. There was a circle of stones, blackened at the base, and bones, too many bones. Small ones. Not deer. Dad knelt beside the stones and poured a bit of ash from the leather pouch into the center. He whispered something I couldn't hear. "What's this for?" I asked. "Ward," he said simply. "Not against animals." I didn't ask what that meant. We set up camp by dusk. A small lean-to and a fire that barely kept out the creeping cold. I sat close to it, holding my rifle like a security blanket, pretending I wasn't scared out of my mind. Then I saw them. In the tree, low to the ground, too far apart to be a raccoon. No reflection, just dull glassy orbs staring back. "Dad," I whispered, "something's watching us." He didn't turn his head. "Don't look, and don't speak again until I tell you." I obeyed. The eyes disappeared. But the silence grew thicker, heavier, like the woods were holding their breath. That night I couldn't sleep. I heard soft footfalls, not twigs snapping but a kind of padding, like paws, heavy and slow. I buried myself in the coat, tried to pretend I didn't hear the snuffling sound near our lean-to. Something breathing too close. Then came the howl. It didn't rise like a normal wolf's call. It shook the trees, rattled in my chest. A layered sound like 2 creatures screaming at once. One low and guttural, the other high, almost woman-like. I dared to peek outside. What I saw stood on 4 limbs, but its joints bent wrong, its back was stretched thin and wet with matted hair. Its mouth was split wide open, revealing not 1 but 2 rows of teeth. And it was staring at our fire like it remembered it. Or feared it. Part 2. The Pact Beneath the Pine. I didn't scream. Not because I was brave, but because I knew that thing wanted me to. It just stood there, inches beyond the firelight, as if it couldn't or wouldn't cross into it. Its ribcage visibly heaved, the skin between bones so thin I could see organs pulsing beneath. But what chilled me most was the way it tilted its head like it was trying to remember me. Then, just as silently as it appeared, it turned and crawled back into the trees. Dad stepped behind me, his boots crunching softly in the frost. I hadn't even heard him wake up. "You saw it, didn't you?" I nodded, too numb to speak. "That's a hollow one," he said. "They come from places men weren't meant to touch. But we did anyway." He sat me down by the fire and tossed a handful of dried leaves into the flames. The scent was earthy, sharp, like burning pine and mint. "You think this land's always been like this?" he asked. "I don't know," I said, finally finding my voice. "Well, it hasn't. Long before your granddad built that cabin, this whole ridge belonged to something else. Not animals, not ghosts either. They're more like echoes, but they can wear flesh when they want." He stirred the fire again. "Locals used to leave them offerings, not because they worshipped them, but to appease them. Deer hearts, big tongues. Once a year, a pact. We stopped doing that." I stared into the fire, trying to swallow what I'd seen. "Did Mom see them too?" Dad didn't answer for a long time. "She didn't see them," he said at last. "She heard them." The next morning was colder, the air like broken glass. We broke camp in silence and headed deeper into Fern Hollow. Dad seemed tense, his eyes scanning the treetops more than the trail. At one point he muttered something under his breath, and the air around us felt thinner, like the forest didn't want us there. By noon we reached an old church. At least it had once been one. Now it was just a hollow husk of rotting beams and ivy-choked windows. A broken cross leaned against the altar stone, split down the middle. "What is this place?" I asked. "Where the last pact was broken." He led me behind the ruin to a shallow pit filled with bones. "Some animal, some not. They tried to burn it all," Dad muttered. "Thought fire would drive them off. But you can't burn what was never really here." He pointed to a tree with black bark and markings carved deep into the trunk. Symbols, circles, eyes, animal shapes drawn with jagged lines. "These aren't just stories, son. They're instructions." I ran my fingers over the grooves. One looked like a wolf with a human hand coming out of its mouth. "What do they want?" I whispered. Dad looked away. "Sometimes they want a body. Sometimes just your voice." We camped near the river that night. I asked Dad if he'd ever spoken to one of them. He didn't answer right away. Then he said, "No one really speaks to them. They listen. They wait. And when you're at your weakest, they echo your words back to you." That night, I dreamed of my mother. She stood by the riverbank, her dress soaked, face pale and slack. Her mouth moved, but no sound came out. Then, just as I stepped toward her, she opened her mouth wider than any person should be able to, and out came my own voice, screaming. I woke up crying into my pillow of pine needles. At dawn, Dad was gone. No note, no prints, just the slow swirl of mist where he'd slept. I called out. No answer. The forest didn't echo. I waited an hour, then two. Then I heard it, a dry, whispering howl that seemed to scrape across the treetops. Not the same one as last night. This one was closer. Part 3, Ash in the Blood. I didn't wait much longer. I grabbed the rifle, wrapped myself tighter in the coat Dad gave me, and followed the river downstream. The cold bit into my fingers, but I didn't care. The trees felt closer now, almost like they were leaning in to watch. I found Dad's tracks briefly, just a few boot prints in the mud. Then they stopped. Not faded, not washed away. Stopped, like he'd vanished mid-step. That's when I noticed it, Carved into the bark of a nearby birch tree, a new symbol. A hollow circle with slashes through it, 3 in total. Fresh sap still dripping like blood from the wound. I didn't know what it meant, but when I looked at it too long, I started hearing a whisper inside my own thoughts. You heard her too. I turned around. No one there. I pressed on. The deeper I walked, the more the forest changed. Trees were dying from the inside out, gray rot spreading across trunks like veins. Birds didn't fly here. Even the air tasted wrong, metallic and dry. Then I saw it. A shallow cave behind a curtain of moss, tucked into the hillside like a wound in the world. I shouldn't have gone in, but I did. The walls were damp and pulsing, like the inside of something alive. I used the flashlight sparingly, its battery already weak. That's when I saw the photos. Pinned to the walls with old nails, hundreds of faded Polaroids. Men, women, children, all standing in that same forest clearing with that same dead look in their eyes. One photo had my mother in it. She was holding something, someone. A baby wrapped in a red wool blanket. I touched the photo and the wall beneath it moved, flesh peeling back to reveal more symbols burned into the stone. My hands started to itch. I looked down to find small black flakes flaking off my fingertips, like ash. Back at the riverbank, my skin was burning, not like a rash, like something underneath was trying to crawl out. I knelt down to splash cold water on my face. That's when I saw my reflection. My left eye had darkened, not bruised but black. Pupil stretched into a slit, the veins around it spider-webbed with gray. I blinked, and for a split second, I saw another face in the water beside mine. My father. But not as I remembered him. His face was gaunt. His mouth twisted into a silent scream. Black fluid dripped from his jaw as 2 rows of jagged teeth pushed out beneath his skin. His eyes, one of them still human, locked on mine. Then the image rippled away. I threw up beside the stream. Not from sickness, but from dread. The pain in my chest grew worse. Something hot beneath my ribs, like embers waking up. I tried to breathe through it, but every inhale came with a scent I couldn't ignore. Scorched wood and blood. Then I heard footsteps. Fast, snapping branches. I aimed the rifle. A figure burst from the trees, tall, lean, face covered in blood. For a moment I almost shot. Then I recognized the coat. Dad. He looked wrong. His skin was slick with sweat. His eyes were wild, too wide, too glassy. He grabbed me by the shoulders. You need to listen. It's already in you. He dragged me back toward the ruined church. He was breathing hard, voice cracked and raspy like he'd been screaming for hours. You saw the cave, didn't you? Damn it. I told her not to. He stopped mid-sentence. His body trembled. I saw black veins crawling up his neck, pulsing. I thought I could stop it. Thought if I took you out here, made you see, maybe it wouldn't take hold. What's happening to me? I cried. What was in that place? He looked at me, not like a father anymore. Like a man realizing his child might become something else entirely. Your mother was a vessel. She made the pact. You were the cost. He collapsed. I caught him just before his head hit the stones. His body was burning up, his skin turning papery and pale. The black veins pulsed faster, like they were moving under his skin. He looked at me one last time. You have to finish it, or it'll finish you. Then he convulsed and screamed. It wasn't human. That double howl, high and low, layered over itself like broken harmony, ripped through the trees again. Only this time it came from him. Part 4. The Bones Remember. My father's body twisted. I watched, frozen, helpless, as his spine arched like a hooked branch. Bones snapped beneath the skin, loud and deliberate, each break followed by a shudder of black liquid pulsing through him. He screamed again, but the scream wasn't his alone. It was layered. Two voices, one his, the other, deeper, older, like the forest itself was using him to speak. "Get back," he howled between spasms. Don't let it see you." I stumbled away as his limbs jerked violently. His fingers bent backward, reshaping themselves into clawed digits. His jaw cracked wide open, dislocating with a wet snap, and from his gums, a new set of teeth pushed forward like thorns blooming in blood. I should have run. I didn't, because I could still see him in there, his eyes flickering with terror, not rage. He didn't want to hurt me. He wanted me to finish it, and I almost did. I raised the rifle. My hands shook so violently I could barely aim. But then he stopped moving. His back rose in one final convulsion and then collapsed with a sickening thud. Smoke rose from his skin. Ash pooled beneath his body like a shadow burned too deeply into the earth. His chest still rose barely. He was still alive. For now. "Go," he rasped, voice shredded. "Go to the spine tree, before they call the rest." I didn't ask what he meant. Something primal in me already knew. The spine tree wasn't marked on any map, but I remembered it. A nightmare from when I was little, a twisted pine at the edge of the mountain's shadow. Mom used to warn me never to go there. "Trees like that don't grow alone," she'd whisper. "They're fed." And now I understood what she meant. It took hours. Through frost, roots, and silence that throbbed in my ears, I made my way toward the place dreams went to rot. The forest was wrong. The deeper I went, the more the trees leaned away, bowing back as if recoiling from something ahead. Then I saw it. The spine tree. It jutted from the earth like a finger broken at every joint. Its bark was the color of bloodied stone. Its branches curved upward like rib cages, and around it bones, animal, human, arranged in spirals, symbols, even furniture. Chairs made of vertebrae, altars of skulls. I felt sick, but I stepped forward. The moment I crossed the bone ring, the wind stopped. Then I heard it. A voice, not from the air but inside my chest. A low hum beneath my heartbeat. "Welcome back." I dropped to my knees. The pain in my ribs returned, worse than ever, like fire caught in my lungs. I peeled off the coat and lifted my shirt. My chest was glowing, faintly, sickly yellow, where the veins had darkened and spread. They formed a spiral I had seen before, on the wall of the cave. I remembered my mother's voice. Not a memory, a dream. One I'd had over and over as a child. "I'll carry it until he's old enough," she whispered in the dream. "Then it's his turn." I screamed, not out of pain but fury. I wasn't a boy anymore. I was a curse wrapped in skin. A bloodline left to rot on sacred soil. They made me for this. And the hollow ones, they had been waiting. The sky darkened. Not like a storm, but like the world blinking. Figures emerged from the woods. At first they looked like wolves, then like men, then like both and neither. Dozens of them crawling, twitching, dragging their limbs wrong. Their mouths hung open, whispering in tandem. They surrounded the spine tree in perfect silence. Then they began to howl. A hollow, dual-throated chorus that rose like smoke from a dying fire. Something shifted inside me. The veins on my arms pulsed. My vision blurred. I felt something old waking up beneath my skin. The curse was calling home, but I wasn't going to let it take me. Not without a fight. Part 5. The Spiral Pact. The Hollow Ones stood in a perfect circle around the spine tree, unmoving, not breathing, not blinking. Their bodies twitched with unnatural spasms, some walking on all fours, some dragging limbs like half-broken puppets. Each one bore the same stretched skin, sunken eyes, and mouthfuls of mismatched teeth. But what chilled me more than anything was that some of them still wore clothes. A torn scarf, a wedding ring, a school badge. These weren't just monsters. They were people once. My heart pounded against the spiral mark on my chest as if trying to break free. I clutched my side, falling to one knee. The pain had rhythm now. A steady beat, like a drum calling something out from under my skin. Blood remembers, a voice whispered, not from the creatures but from the tree itself. I turned. The bark had split open like a wound. From it, dark sap oozed down into a bowl-shaped hollow carved into the roots. Inside it, I saw reflections. My mother, her hands dripping with blood. Dad, screaming into the woods. Me being born beneath a harvest moon. I wasn't just part of the curse. I was its vessel. The ground trembled. From beneath the tree something moved, massive, slow, ancient. Roots curled upward like fingers. Bones rattled. The hollow ones fell to their knees in unison, howling not in rage but in worship. A figure emerged. Not a beast. Not a man. Something else. Its body was smoke and shadow, bound by a skin made of screams. Its head, if it had one, wore a mask of twisted antlers and mouths. The forest bowed. My spine seized. The voice inside me screamed, "Run!" But I didn't, because something deeper whispered, "This is what you were born for." The entity stepped forward, dragging a chain made of jawbones behind it. And then it spoke, though no lips moved. "You carry the blood of promise, the tongue of memory, the womb of silence. Offer, and the hollow shall sleep once more." My mouth opened on its own. Offer what? Flesh, fire, or yourself? The bowl in the roots shimmered. In it I saw three symbols: a burning figure, a bleeding deer, and a boy with his chest cut open. I backed away. My legs were jelly. The hollow ones crawled forward, moaning, not to attack, but to wait, like they were hungry for whatever I chose. I looked around the clearing, desperate. Then I saw him. Dad, still breathing, barely. He had crawled into the edge of the clearing, eyes glassy, jaw trembling. "Do it," he rasped. "Burn me. Feed them. End it." Tears poured down my face. I can't." His body twisted again, the curse still eating him alive. "If you don't, you'll take my place. Or worse, you'll finish becoming what I couldn't." I turned toward the spine tree. The bowl pulsed. I picked up a bone torch from the ground, a femur wrapped in dried sinew. The hollow ones began to chant, throats scraping like dry bark. Their voices layered, hypnotic. I raised the torch, walked to my father. He looked at me, really looked at me, and smiled. Not in peace, in relief. I whispered, "I'm sorry," and lit the torch. The flames caught fast, fed by whatever dark blessing had cursed this forest. My father screamed, not in pain but something beyond pain. Something that shook the clearing and cracked the bark of the spine tree. The hollow ones wailed, collapsing. The smoke from the fire spiraled upward, forming a black crown above the spine tree's antlers. The entity stepped back into the roots, vanishing like mist. The ground stopped shaking. The tree closed its wound, and the chanting died. I dropped the torch, collapsed to my knees. The spiral on my chest faded to white. The black veins retracted. I thought it was over, but then something moved inside me. Just once. A twitch beneath the ribs. A reminder. The hollow never truly leaves. It only sleeps. Part 6. Embers in the Soil. I stayed beside the spine tree until the fire burned out. Not just my father's body, but the air, the cold, the silence. Everything felt scorched. The hollow ones had dissolved into ash, gone. Their moans, their twisted bodies, their 1,000 broken joints, all vanished with the smoke. But I didn't feel victorious. I felt empty, like something had been scraped out of me, and something else was settling in. When I finally stood, my knees buckled. The pain was gone. The spiral on my chest had faded completely, but in its place, beneath my ribs, was a slow throb. Not painful, just present. A new pulse. I walked back toward the old church, retracing my steps. The trees no longer bowed. They watched, as if I had become something worth watching. It took 2 days to return to the cabin. I barely slept. I barely ate. At night, I dreamed of things I couldn't explain. Burning altars, rivers of bone, a woman with no face whispering names I didn't know but somehow recognized. Names that tasted like dirt and blood. I woke each time with dry leaves in my mouth. By the time I reached the cabin, the front door was swinging open, the windows broken, wind crawling through like a thief. Inside, the fireplace was cold, and on the table was a note, written in my father's handwriting. If the tree accepts him, he may return, but he will not return whole. I should have run. Instead, I went back to town. I don't even know why. Maybe I wanted to believe something still made sense out there, that the village I left behind, the people, the quiet streets, could anchor me to reality again. But Fern Hollow was not the place I remembered. It was wrong. The first thing I noticed was the silence. The second was the smell, like wet fur and burnt wood. Smoke drifted from chimneys, but I saw no people. No voices, no dogs, no bikes left out in the yards like before. Just a stillness that felt curated, designed, like the whole town was waiting. I knocked on the door of the general store. No answer. I went to the schoolhouse. Empty. Then I reached the church at the center of town, and I saw them, villagers, standing in perfect rows inside the pews facing the altar. All of them unmoving, eyes wide open, mouths slightly parted. It looked like they were sleeping with their eyes open, or listening to something I couldn't hear. "Hello," I whispered. No reaction. I stepped inside. Wood creaked beneath my feet. The air was thick, heavy like fog, but dry, like the church was full of invisible dust. Then I saw it. On the altar, a bowl, not made of wood or clay, but of bone, and inside it, black ash, spiral-shaped, still warm. It looked just like the bowl beneath the spine tree. One of the villagers, a woman I recognized as Mrs. Delaney, the baker, turned her head slowly. Her mouth opened wider than it should have, and from it came a whisper layered with 2 voices. "You brought it home." I backed away. No, I ended it. But her eyes darkened. More heads turned. More mouths opened. Whispers layered on whispers. "You offered blood, not silence. You fed the roots, not the flame. You woke what should have slept." I turned and ran. Outside, the village had changed. Ash was falling like snow. Thick, soft, endless. I wiped it from my eyes, my mouth. It tasted like burnt bone. And through the white haze, I saw them, crawling from the edges of the town, rising from wells, emerging from collapsed basements. Hollow ones, but different. These were new, fresh. Faces I recognized twisted into mockeries. Friends, neighbors, teachers. Their bodies still wore the human shape, but their eyes held the spiral. It pulsed in their pupils, glowing faintly, like mine once did. I ran to the edge of town. The trees didn't welcome me this time. They opened for me. A path uncurled like a tongue, leading deeper into the mountain, farther than I'd ever dared go. And I understood in that moment the truth. The ritual didn't end the curse. It passed it on. The hollow ones weren't bound to the spine tree anymore. They were bound to me, Part 7. The Warden's Tongue. The forest swallowed me. Not literally, but I felt it in my bones. The moment I stepped off the road, the trees shifted, rising higher, leaning in, like they were pulling breath from my lungs. But I didn't turn back, because now I understood where this path ended, where it had always been meant to end. Not at a cabin, not at the village, but at the shrine of the first tongue. It wasn't a shrine in the way churches build them. There were no walls, no crosses, just stone, circles, dozens of them, arranged like ripples in water. Each ring made of different things: bones, branches, shattered antlers, human teeth. And in the center, a pillar. One, covered in spirals and faces that were almost human. At its base sat a woman in a red cloak, her back to me, but I knew her instantly, even before she spoke. "Hello, darling." My legs buckled. "Mom?" She turned slowly, and though her face was older than I remembered, worn, cracked like tree bark, it was hers, except for her eyes. They were glassy, reflective, spiral pupils that pulsed softly in sync with the air. "You shouldn't be here," I whispered. She smiled faintly. "Neither should I, but we are, because we were chosen." She stood and I noticed the mark on her chest, same as mine. Spiral, faint, glowing. "Why didn't you tell me?" I asked, voice breaking. "Why did you leave?" "I didn't leave," she said. "I was taken. When I gave birth to you under the hollow moon, the pact transferred." I staggered back. "No, I ended the pact. I burned it." She held up a hand. "You paused it, but you didn't fulfill it." She stepped closer. Her feet left no prints in the dirt. "You carry the voice now. The forest listens to you. The hollow ones wait for your words." "No," I whispered. "I won't be their god." She laughed softly. "They don't need a god, just a warden." Behind her, the stone pillar shifted. But inside it, a throne, not of gold or wood, but flesh. Bound muscle and bone shaped like a chair that breathed. Mom gestured toward it. "If no one speaks for them, they'll roam free. You saw what happened in the village. Without a voice, they echo. They killed everyone." "No," she corrected gently. "They became everyone. What's left now is just reflections, empty vessels. You can stop the spread, if you accept the throne." I looked at the flesh seat pulsing in the pillar. Every instinct told me to run, but something else, something older, pulled me toward it. Then I heard a sound, a distant scream, a real one, human. I turned. From the far trees, a figure stumbled into view. Elijah, my childhood friend. His coat torn, face pale, eyes wide with terror. "Help me," he yelled. "They're everywhere." Behind him, shadows, twisting, crawling, new hollow ones, fast, not echoes, not memories, fresh. They'd followed me. I reached for my rifle, forgotten, gone. I turned to my mother. "Can you stop them?" She shook her head. "Only you can now." I sprinted toward Elijah, grabbed his arm, and pulled him behind a tree. "They changed. They're different now," he panted. "They took my brother, turned him inside out." I looked back at the shrine, at the throne. The stone had closed again. I had seconds to decide. "They want you," Elijah said, staring at my chest. "That mark, they follow you." "I know." And then I heard them. The hollow ones, not howling, chanting my name. Not the one I was born with, but the one whispered by the spiral. "Warden." Elijah grabbed a rusted axe from the ground. "If they want blood, let's give them hell." I stared at the shrine once more, and in that moment, two paths split before me. One ended with fire and blades, the other with silence and control. Neither path ended with freedom, only containment. Part 8, Where Echoes Rest. The forest shuddered, not from wind or footsteps, but from intention. The hollow ones crawled between trees like smoke given shape, their jaws unhinged, mouths opened wide in that haunting double-throated scream. They weren't hunting, they were summoning, calling me home. I grabbed Elijah's wrist, pulled him behind the altar stones. He was shaking, but his grip on the axe was firm. "How do we stop them?" he asked, voice cracked. "I don't think we do," I said. He stared at me. "Then why are we still breathing?" "Because the forest hadn't decided yet. Because I hadn't." I turned back to the shrine. The pillar had reopened. The throne of flesh still waited, glistening, pulsing, shaped like an open wound in time. It wasn't just a seat, it was a mouth. A place where the warden sits not to rule, but to speak for the hollow. That was the secret. The spiral wasn't a symbol of power, it was a lock, and my blood was the key. Elijah looked at me like I was slipping away. "You're not seriously thinking about?" "I don't have a choice." "Yes, you do. You can run. We can burn this place down." I shook my head. "You saw what fire does. It silences them. But only until the next vessel is born. It doesn't end." He clenched his jaw. "Then let it burn forever." I touched the spiral on my chest. It had begun to glow again. My mother stepped forward from the shadows. She looked proud, but also relieved. "You were always meant to choose," she said softly. "We just kept that choice from you." I stared at her for a long time. "You're not real." Her smile didn't fade. "Neither is the forest, but it remembers, and it needs someone to remember for it." I stepped toward the pillar. The hollow ones lowered their heads, their mouths no longer howling. Now they were silent, listening, waiting. Elijah grabbed my arm. "If you sit on that thing, you're gone. You know that, right? The real you dies in there." "Maybe," I whispered, "or maybe the real me has always been in there." I looked at the axe in his hand, then at the shrine, then at my hands. They weren't trembling anymore. The spiral had stopped pulsing. I walked to the throne, placed a hand on its surface. Warm, alive. It opened wider, welcoming. Then I did something no one expected. I pulled Elijah forward. His eyes went wide. "What are you?" "I'm sorry," I whispered, and shoved the spiral into his chest. The throne screamed. So did he. And the hollow ones howled, not in rage, but in ecstasy. The pact accepted the new vessel. My mark faded. Elijah's burned red hot. He fell to his knees, gasping, eyes swirling into spiral pupils. He wasn't just chosen. He had become the warden. And I walked away. Not because I deserved to, but because I was no longer bound. The forest let me go. No claws, no curse. Just the cold wind and the sound of Elijah's voice screaming my name as I disappeared between the trees. I don't know how long I wandered. A day? A year? But eventually I found roads again. People, noise, light. But I never forgot the spiral, or the screams, or what I'd done. I live in a small town now. Different name, different face. But some nights, I still hear it, far away, low and layered, a howl from the hollow. And I know that Elijah is still there, sitting on a throne made of memory and bone, speaking for the monsters, because someone has to.
And that was tonight's tale from the Shadowed Tales archive. If it left a mark on your mind, if the silence feels heavier now, then the story did what it was meant to do. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and share the darkness. New stories are always on their way. Until then, Keep the lights low and the doors locked.